That was Nigel Farage yesterday. We're joined now by UKIP MEP Tim Aker. Welcome back. Can we just be clear? This wasn't a European Union policy to intervene in Libya. It was a decision of the governments, particularly of Britain and France, as individual nation states. It may have been right or may have been wrong, but it wasn't the European Union that bombed Libya. Indeed, Germany, the biggest member, was against it. So were many others. So that I don't understand the point that Nigel Farage is trying to make.
Well, it was our own government. They decided that the best way to sort that out. But I'll come on to the European Union in a moment. Bombing Libya, trying to bomb Syria. Imagine if we'd have bombed Syria and the crisis that would have caused. It's been completely misguided policy.
Many of these refugees are from Syria.
Yeah, but when you look,
they've made their way to Libya from Syria. Many of them are from there.
And when you look at what the European Union has done in response to this, it had the Mare Nostrum programme, which is part of Frontex, the external border, and they've replaced that with Triton, which actually scaled back the number and the area of search and rescue operations. So I think that the European Union's record means that it's unfit to deal with this problem. I think they've got to look further at the UN. I don't want anything like this. When I heard you say that there had been another boat in trouble, it's my gut retched at it, because this is a catastrophe, and I think the UN needs to step up to this, because it's an intercontinental catastrophe that's happening. It doesn't just stop at the EU's borders, and I think that the heads of government, the UN, the biggest countries with the most influence, should get together on this.
Jeremy Brown, whether one agrees or disagrees with our intervention in Libya, there is no question it's turned it into a failed state. And as a failed state, the people traffickers are more powerful than any of the authorities. So from sub-Saharan Africa and other parts of the Middle East, people are flooding onto the shores, the Mediterranean shores of Libya, and doing these life-threatening journeys. It is a problem of our creation. What should we be doing about it?
That's too simplistic for the reasons you just said to Tim, which is that we intervened in Libya. We voted in the House of Commons not to intervene in Syria, and yet we have a refugee problem from both countries. So I don't think you can attribute it just to intervention. And I actually think there are plenty of reasons to be frustrated by the European Union, but I think that Tim and UKIP are picking a very bad reason on this.
Well, what should the European Union do?
They've scaled back the search and rescue operations. That's
let me explain what I am. It's extremely unfashionable now, but I am instinctively a liberal interventionist, and I think that there is a vacuum in Western foreign policy to deal with North Africa and the Middle East. We have intervened and then pulled back in Libya. We have voted in the House of Commons not to intervene in Syria despite chemical weapons being used. We have an extremely high aid budget in this country, and we should be spending that along with a more muscular foreign policy to try and work with other countries in the West, most notably in Europe, to try and have some sort of strategy.
Libya is beyond international aid. Libya is ungovernable. You send international aid to Libya and it will end up in the bank accounts of the people traffickers and the gangsters.
I'm not saying that we should be sending cash to spend by people in Libya, but I'm saying that we have a large international development budget which needs to go on ongoing programmes to do with disease eradication, but also on emergencies precisely of this sort. When people say, why are we spending money on international aid, international development, this is precisely the sort of scenario where we should be looking to have a presence and having an overall strategy which makes sense. I'm not saying we can eradicate the problems, but at the moment there is a vacuum, there's an absence of a plan to try and even deal with it.
Tim Aker, isn't this something that does need a coordinated European Union response? It's a bigger problem than any one state. It's too big for Italy to resolve. Isn't this what the European Union was made to respond to?
Well, I think that would be one step forward. If the EU can come up with a plan, then fine. The people are dying, and I don't care what or who gets together on this. There's got to be an international effort to stop this, to go after the people traffickers. And it was nice to hear Philip Hammond, when he was interviewed earlier, who said that the traffickers are a part of this, as well as the failed states.
We have no ability to go after them.
You've got to look further than the European Union. This issue is not just stopping at the EU's borders. It's going on further, and it's an international crisis.
When Nigel Farage said that we could take, yesterday he said to me, we could take some Libyan Christians. Why Libyan? They're not actually Libyan Christians. They're Christians who've ended up in Libya. Why would he say that? Why? Shia Muslims are also very vulnerable at the moment. Why wouldn't we take some of them too if we have room for any? Why just
well, we've heard
Christians?
horrible instances of Christian persecution in
And
states where we've intervened.
Shias are being
where we've
beheaded
intervened, but it's very
as well.
difficult for Christians to find safe countries there with the destabilisation that many of these regions are facing. So we've said we'll do our part, but you know, once and for all, this is an major international crisis that is well beyond the EU.
All right, Tim Aker, thank you for joining us.